So you're interested in becoming a labor and delivery or postpartum nurse, maybe both. Well, welcome to my channel. My name is Rosa. I'm just going to be diving in how I prepared to become a new grad labor and delivery and postpartum nurse. First, I just wanted to talk a little bit briefly about my background and how I got into nursing. I originally wanted to be a certified nurse midwife. So when I was applying to programs, I initially was applying to joint programs. I do have a bachelor's degree already in public health. So I was looking at graduate programs that I would either do 1 year for the nursing and then the 2 years for a master or 3 years for a doctorate to become a certified nurse midwife. Now, I did apply to some post-bac nursing programs as well. And I'm actually really glad that's the route I went. There's tons of people out there who do want to do those joint programs, and a lot of people have a lot of different feels about whether you need to get your feet wet a little bit as a nurse or not. But for me personally, I was originally planning on that, and that's just not the way the cards unfolded, and that's totally fine. So while I was prepping for nursing school and I was still applying, I wanted to make sure that I was getting some experience to make sure that labor and delivery was actually something that I would want to do. In theory, it sounded great. I always wanted to focus on women as a population that I served and the type of work that I was going to do in the future. However, I hadn't seen birth at this point. What I ended up doing was, while I was doing all my prep courses at community college, preparing to do nursing school and all that application and whatnot, I also did a doula certification. Now, I did this because I wanted to get my hands on a little bit more into what actual birth work looks like. I reached out to a bunch of different doulas and more specifically midwives because that's what I thought I wanted to do. Not really a lot of luck with the midwives. A lot of people did not reach back out to me, or the door was just kind of shut and it was really difficult to get in. And I felt like there was no way that I was going to be able to shadow unless I did something else. Your girl was trying to do her due diligence and reach out to different midwives in the area where I was living at the time. These were going to be midwives that worked in birth centers or home birth midwives that I was trying to reach out to, and they were just not having it. So that made me feel really discouraged because this is something I wanted to do, and I wanted to reach out to people before I made this drastic decision and spent a lot of money and a lot of time. I did do this online certification, and I will say it's not necessarily something that you need to do. It was a lot of money, but I'm so glad that I did because I was actually able to work as a doula prior to me starting my nursing education. After I did my certification to be a doula, this was online for me. I did start working as a postpartum doula first. This was really easy for me to transition into because I was working already for many, many years when I was in college as a babysitter and a nanny. I had a couple families that I was working for at the time. It was quite easy for me to actually get into contact with other people who were pregnant and needed some help when their baby came, or who already had a baby and they just needed some help. At the time, I was doing postpartum night work. I stayed overnight helping families get some sleep, helping with all the baby stuff, and that was wonderful. I still needed to get a birth in because that's really what I wanted to make sure. I haven't seen all the blood and fluid and the pain and emotions and what was that going to be like. So my first birth was actually seeing my niece be born, and that was very, very special for me. So I flew out where my brother and sister-in-law were living at the time. Thankfully, she allowed me to be a part of that experience, and it was one of the most incredible moments that I can remember. And after seeing that birth, I was like, yep, this is exactly what I want to do. From there, I ended up doing some doula volunteer programs through the hospitals where I was living back in California at the time, because I was already kind of transitioning into making my move for nursing school within the next 6 months to a year. So there just wasn't enough time for me to transition from what I was doing with my regular job nannying and into getting my own clients consistently. I do wish that I would have figured out birth work sooner, and that's something that I was interested in, but sometimes that's not how life works, and that's totally fine. So prior to me applying to nursing programs in the sense of the nursing program that I just completed in December 2020. I had actually applied to nurse midwifery joint programs. Now I did end up getting an interview to one of the programs, and I made it to that interview, flew out for it. However, I was not accepted at the time. I was very sad about this. I mean, it did bring my energy down quite a bit, but it was a great learning opportunity. I ended up being able to speak to a lot of current students at that place who were midwifery students or who were in their first year doing their RN portions of the program. And it gave me a really lot of insight talking to those students and what they did to get to where they were. A lot of them were doulas before or had seen a birth. It's not necessarily something that you needed to do that, but the overarching thing that I was seeing of people who were getting into those programs were not only having just general life experience in working in a lot of different things. I think that's always helpful, but they had been connected to birth work in some sort of way or have seen it. And I think that was very important and key because these programs wanted to know that this is something that you want to do, because oftentimes people get into it and think, oh, babies, it's all fun and games. And when they get into it, it's too much. Maybe seeing a birthing person in general is not something that you can tolerate. Maybe dealing with vomit's not something that you can tolerate. There's a lot of different reasons why maybe birth work in general is not going to work for you. And so that's why it was so important that I personally did the doula certification and did the work I needed to do to start seeing deliveries and births and working with families prior to me going to school. That being said, December 2020 came around, I graduated. When I applied to nursing programs around me, I wanted a new grad program. I knew the odds were very low. I've had tons of people in nursing school, particularly teachers and faculty, dissuade me from trying to do a specialty in labor and delivery right away. And I'm glad I didn't listen to them because I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and it worked out for me. And I think that passion and really conveying like, hey, this is what I want to do. There's nothing else that I wanted to do. I've done X, Y, and Z. I have different experience from all these different places in my life that I think are really valuable, and I'm going to bring that here into this workspace. I think that really shined when I did the interview, and that's part of the reason why I got the job that I did. And so now I'm working as a labor and delivery and postpartum nurse. I'd love to hear from you what kinds of questions you have about being a labor and delivery / postpartum nurse, being a new grad, nursing school, anything. Shoot some comments below if you have any. If this type of content is something that you are interested in, please go ahead and give a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you next time.